Well, I want to welcome everyone to our hall. My name is John Bolden. I'm president of Machinists District 751. We're proud to have you all here. I'm so excited to have such dynamic leaders in Congresswoman Jayapal, Senator Murray, and Secretary Walsh. So thank you. We have 28,000 members in the state of Washington. The fact that we're having discussions about the PRO Act and the right to organize, we greatly appreciate. I want to introduce Senator Murray. She's been in the Senate for 30 years. Congratulations on that. She's been a friend of the Machinists for 30 years. She's been a friend of working people and the citizens of the state of Washington for that whole time. Thank you very much. Please welcome Senator Murray.
Thank you. Great to be here. John, thank you. Thank you for hosting us. Thank you for your tremendous work and speaking out for workers constantly. Great to be here with you. Wonderful to be here with Congresswoman Jayapal and our partner back in the other Washington. We collaborate on every plane that we ride out to Washington, D.C. on and back and in between. So it's great to be here with her. And of course, we're delighted to have Secretary Walsh with us today, a true friend of labor, a passionate voice, and I keep telling you, welcome to the better Washington. We're trained to say that back in Washington, D.C.
Got it down now. I got it down.
He's got it down. But you're going to hear from him in just a minute. But obviously, we're here for a very special message. I want to thank all of the workers who are here today, from Monty from the Seattle Building and Construction Trades, Patty from SEIU 925, Minnie from SEIU 1199 Northwest, and Joe from UNCW 3000. The stories that you're going to hear from them today are so important in today's times, and I'm sure that Secretary Walsh will tell you the same thing that I do, hearing from them and what's happening in their world, and as well as Congressman Jayapal, that their stories really inform us of what we need to be doing and fighting for in Washington, D.C., because they are on the front lines. So we really appreciate all of you being here today and sharing what you are seeing in today's world. You know, these workers really are what keeps all of our communities going. They are really the force behind the economic growth, and they really deserve a fair share of the wealth that they help create. It's just as simple as that. And right now, despite the recovery that we are seeing in our country, our economy still is benefiting the wealthiest people and the biggest corporations and leaving a lot of workers behind. The top 1% actually have seen their wages grow by 205% in the midst of this pandemic. And meanwhile, workers are really stuck with wages that are not keeping up to pace. CEOs and corporate profits are skyrocketing, and workers across the country are really struggling to make ends meet today. And that's not all. They're dealing with unsafe workplaces, tough working conditions, sexual harassment, particularly in some of our service industries that are making it really tough for people to go to work today. And you'll hear some of that from them. And by the way, that especially hurts women and people of color, those kinds of challenges. But you know what? It doesn't have to be this way. It does not have to be this way. Unions can actually give workers a very powerful voice to demand better and to demand their share of this economic growth, and demand fair wages and working conditions that allow them to take care of their own families and for those businesses to be able to grow and help all of us be a better country. So it is our job really to protect every single worker's right to form and join a union and bargain collectively. And that's exactly what the PRO Act will do. As everybody here in the labor movement knows, the PRO Act is actually the most significant work empowerment legislation since the Great Depression. And it's pretty simple. It just makes it easier for workers to organize so they can have a powerful voice. It strengthens their ability to bargain collectively, and it closes loopholes in our labor laws that leave too many of our workers behind today. You know, workers across the country deserve more today. And that's what we are trying to do in Congress, to make sure that they have part of this wealth of this country and the promise of America. So we're very excited about the PRO Act. And there's other barriers, by the way, to the work today. We're going to hear from Patty about child care. This is near and dear to my heart. You can't go to work if you don't have child care. Or if you are at work and your kids aren't safe, you don't do a good job. Patty can talk about that more. Monty continually talks about strong protection for workers. In the bipartisan infrastructure bill that we passed, we put in really strong protections for workers. We are excited about building roads and bridges and highways and infrastructure, but you can't do it if you don't have workers, and we need to have protections for workers in that. Minnie is going to talk about healthcare workers. We all are so grateful in this country for our healthcare workers, but we know the challenges in that workforce, and we have a responsibility to make sure that they have good working conditions and the retention capability that we all need, and that they all deserve to have the protections of our laws as well. And finally, Joe, we're going to hear from Joe, who's going to be talking to us about organizing and the reason why it's important that we have the ability to join together voices to make sure that we protect workers. So I'm looking forward to all of you and your words today, and I want you to know we are working as hard as we can in the United States Senate to pass the PRO Act, but to also pass all these other conditions that help our workers be able to take care of their own families, which is absolutely critical. And with that, I am delighted to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Secretary of Labor, Secretary Walsh. He is doing an amazing job, and I think it's because his heart and soul is from the workforce. He knows what happens in everyday people's lives and their families. Former mayor of Boston, you'll hear it in his voice, although he's trying to pretend he's not quite as Bostonian as he's out here.
Just slow down.
Yeah, slow down. But he is a partner of ours, and I am delighted that we have a Secretary of Labor who actually really understands what labor means. It's people, it's their families, making sure they have the protections they need, and we are delighted you are here. And hope you're seeing our great state as we all know and love it, and look forward to your words today.
Thank you very much, Senator, and I want to thank Senator Murray for inviting me to this great state, but also for fighting on behalf of working people, not just here in Washington State, but one of the leading voices in the United States Senate as chair of Ed and Labor for working people and people in this country. And I want to thank her for her work and her advocacy and all the work that she's done. I want to thank you, John, and the Machinists for allowing us to be in your hall today and have this important conversation and later conversations today. I want to thank all the people at the table here, all the leaders at the table for what you do, fighting for the members of your unions and what you stand for and who you are, honestly, for being here. The President is certainly delivering a historic economic recovery. As we think about what we have gone through as Americans and quite honestly in the world over the last 2.5 years with COVID-19, the President talked about really creating a strong economy, bringing people back, bringing America back better. 7.4 million people have returned to the workforce, 3.9% unemployment rate in the United States of America right now. Last year, we dropped 2 full points, first time in the history of our country. Investing in workforce development and job training money, along with the Congresswoman and the Senator and other folks, really making major investments in new careers, new opportunities for people, something that's really important. As we continue to come out of the pandemic, you know, the press that's here today, you've written a lot, I'm assuming you've written a lot, and some of you have read, about what's going on in the workforce. Is it a great resignation? Is it Striketober? What is it? And it really is workers. At the end of the day, it's not about a lack of workers. It's about workers looking for better opportunities. Workers looking to strengthen their families and their positions where they are. We know from the surveys, and a lot of those workers, when you hear those conversations, those workers we're talking about often are not covered by collective bargaining agreement. And the workers that are covered by collective bargaining, we haven't heard about resignations. We haven't heard about people not going back to work. We haven't heard about people looking for better jobs, quite honestly, a better pay. Because it's part of the movement of the labor movement when they fight for negotiations for wages. We also see from surveys and research that many workers want to access and join unions, especially young workers. I've been in the labor movement now myself for over 30 years, and I've never seen a time where so many people, at least poll numbers show that people are looking favorably upon unions in this country, and there's something going on there, and the support is the highest we've seen in decades, and we're seeing organizing happen in digital newsrooms, in coffee shops all across the country, here in this state, in retail shops, in colleges. So we're seeing more activity when it comes to organizing in the United States than we have in quite some time. The President appointed me to serve as the Vice Chairman of the White House task force on worker empowerment, organizing and empowerment, and that task force was chaired by the vice president. We produced a report laying out dozens of ways the federal government can support workers in exercising their rights. But we need more. There's more that we have to do, because, quite honestly, the current laws are outdated. It gives employers too much power to interfere with workers' organizing, elections, and contract negotiations. And again, what the president has talked about, what I've talked about, is everyone should have the right to join a union. That means that if the folks decide not to join a union, that's their absolute constitutional right in some cases. Maybe constitutional is a little strong, but it's their right to do that, free speech. But they should be able to try and join a union without interference and make the decision based on that it's not the right call for them and their family, rather than the tactics that are being used. President Biden said last year the choice about forming a union and joining the union should be the workers' choice. Full stop. That's what he means. The workers should have the right to do that. The PRO Act would restore the balance to our labor laws. It would give workers a real choice by imposing real penalties to employers who break the law. And that's why I and this administration and our legislative partners are committed to pursuing and pushing the PRO Act. I'm here because I was able to join a union, quite honestly. I was able to join a union at the age of 18 years old. My father was able to join a union. I followed him into Labor Local 223 in Boston. When my father came to this country, he came to this country as an immigrant. 35% of American workers belong to a union, and the middle class was growing. That opportunity for my dad to join the laborers union in 1956 gave him a chance to get into the middle class. He came to this country, quite honestly, to support his family back home. He came to this country because America was the American dream, and there was an opportunity for him to come here and be able to fulfill and live that American dream, him and my mother. Because of the union, he was able to buy a home. It was a family, able to put food on the table, a roof over our head. We certainly weren't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but we did have a place in the middle class because of his ability to join the union. Today, that number of union members in this country is 11%, and the middle class has gotten smaller and less secure. So if you look at the decline in the labor movement and the labor numbers, and you look at the decline in the middle class, truly the middle class, we've seen those numbers run parallel on a sheet. It's no coincidence. Joining a union is still one of the surest routes to the middle class for people. As mayor of Boston, I've created pre-apprentice programs in partnership with the union, particularly for women and people of color. Underserved communities in the city of Boston, gave them a chance to get into the building trades. When I was the mayor and the head of the building trades, I was able to do that. I've seen a lot of people join unions that didn't have an opportunity. And once they get the opportunity to join a union and get into that union and get to their apprenticeship and become full journey people in that union, seeing the change, not just for them, but for their family and for our community. So it really is important. The PRO Act is about creating opportunities. The PRO Act is about creating pathways. The PRO Act is about continuing to strengthen our middle class. And as the president likes to say, push from the middle class out and the bottom up. The folks that haven't had an opportunity to be able to get into that middle class, one of the best ways into it is by joining a union and getting into the middle class. So it's simply about the freedom to choose your opportunity, that opportunity. And I'm sure you'll have some questions for me in a little bit. So now I have the great honor of introducing Congresswoman Jayapal, who in her own right has been a champion for working people in her career here in Congress and before that. So Congressman, thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary Walsh. It's an honor to be introduced by you and to welcome you to our district. This is in the 7th Congressional District. We're so proud, John, of having the Machinists Hall in the 7th. And we think of the Fighting 7th and the Fighting Machinists every time we are here. And Senator Murray, it's wonderful to have you as a partner and a leader in the Senate. You have done so much for so many of our working people across the state and across the country. And I think everybody knows, I know most of you around the table because I've been an organizer with you in the streets for 20 years before coming to Congress. And our fights, we know, are not done. They are just beginning. Secretary Walsh, you probably know that Washington State is the 3rd most labor-dense state in the country. And King County, where we sit, is one of the most union-dense counties that we have in the state. And so we are proud of our strong labor history. We have been fighting with the labor movement, community organizations all together for many of the advances that our state has seen. $15 minimum wage, Seattle was the first major city in the country to pass 15, and I was proud to be on that committee with many of you around the table. Paid safe and sick leave. Seattle was one of the first cities to pass that, and in our state, we have some of the best paid safe and sick leave policies in the country. So we believe we lead with our labor-strong partners, with our community partners across the state. And I don't want to rub it into the senator, but we have passed the PRO Act in the House. Multiple times we have passed the PRO Act in the House, and I'm very proud to be one of the co-leads of the PRO Act. In fact, I remember this last cycle with then President Trumka, we did a press conference with the senator, with President Trumka, with workers, because we really felt like this was the moment that we could perhaps get this across the finish line. We're still working hard to get there. I'll say, speaking for myself, if we could eliminate or reform the filibuster, that would really help us. But you see actions like the PRO Act that are about workplace democracy. I mean, what the Secretary said and your experience as coming up through labor, I think, shows us why it is so important for us to protect this right, this critical right to organize. In 1956, 1 in 3 workers were members of a union. Today, 10% of workers across the country are unionized. And we are seeing a real resurgence of union organizing across the country. Just a couple of days ago, we were with you, Secretary Walsh, at the ILWU Hall, and right after that was the vote counting for the first Starbucks that's unionizing. It was a unanimous vote for that Starbucks here in Capitol Hill in Seattle. And I think we are seeing that work across the country where young voters are saying, this has to be better than it is today. We have to be able to work a full-time job, get benefits, and be able to take care of our families. And that is not the case today. For 2 school teachers in Seattle, the median wage is $62,000. You cannot get a house in Seattle, much less childcare in Seattle, for that amount of money. It is impossible. So we need to have the ability for our workers to unionize. And maybe the last thing I'll say is I am very proud to be the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus in the House. We have 98 members, and we have really been at the forefront of pushing for union organizing and labor rights in the House of Representatives. And we are very proud of the role we played in pushing for Build Back Better in this last year, for pushing for childcare with the senator, for pushing for universal pre-K, pushing to leave nobody behind, and we knew that we did need to pass the infrastructure bill. So Monty, I know there were some moments of challenge there where people weren't sure what we were going to do. We were always intent on passing the infrastructure bill. We just didn't want to leave anybody behind. And I think we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we continue to pick up, and I'm very proud that the Progressive Caucus helped make the infrastructure bill possible. It would not have been possible without our members recognizing that we needed to do what we could and continue to work for more at the same time. The very last thing, the Progressive Caucus recently had a wonderful forum with researchers here at the University of Washington about the impact of unionizing on racial equity and the racial wealth gap. And what we have seen over and over again is not only that wages rise for folks of color and that racial wealth gap decreases and inequality decreases for workers of color, but also that attitudes change towards race when workers are in a collective struggle together. When they're unionized, there is now data that shows what we all sort of knew intuitively, but that when workers are unionized, it offers an opportunity for workers to appreciate their diversity and to embrace the concepts and the precepts of racial justice for everybody. So the PRO Act is incredibly necessary. We will do what we can to get it done. There were a few pieces of the PRO Act in the Build Back Better Act that we passed through the House, specifically the fines, to make sure that employers who are interfering with union organizing have real penalties that matter. And we will continue to work with the Senate, see what we can get passed through in terms of the bill as a whole and in terms of pieces that we could put into additional bills. But Secretary Walsh, I'm so glad that you are the Secretary of Labor. I'm so glad that we are working together on trying to increase wages, trying to further unionization. And Senator Murray, thank you so much for your leadership and for inviting me to participate today.
To be here with Secretary Walsh and Senator Murray is a real pleasure for us. My name is Monty Anderson. I represent Seattle Building Trades. About 20,000 workers here in Seattle, about 19 affiliates. Most locals here are in their wear past their century mark. My local itself is 125 years old. The reason I say that is to bring to everybody's attention how important unionization is. My father, when I got in the union, and he got in the union, my grandpa was in the union, they always told me, the kids, listen, you get in the union, you're not gonna get rich working by the hour. But what you're gonna be able to do is provide for your family and retire with some dignity. Well, he used to say, retire so you don't have to eat cat food, but that's really the gist of what a union is. So you can work safely, come home at a decent hour, right? Send your kids to college, buy a normal car, right? And live in a normal neighborhood, and not have to worry about about the pressures of first of all, the economy. You can never control that. But by having a trade and a skill, you can never take that away from a person. And being unionized gives you, people seem to think sometimes that something like the PRO Act, some of the people on the other side seem to act like it's a handout when it is not. All we're asking here is for opportunity. That's it, right? You give people opportunity, they're gonna take that and they're gonna go somewhere with it. But if you don't give people the opportunity to say, listen, I wanna be trained. I wanna be able to have a voice in the workplace. I wanna be able to say, hey, this isn't right. If you don't give people that, you're not really giving them opportunity. And that's why we're seeing where we're at today with low wages. People do not have a voice. So us in the building trades, we're lucky. Not luck alone, but we work hard and we get paid family wages, or we are in the middle class. But it's not enough. We ourselves in the building trades years ago were not the best organization to be in. We had to have comeuppance where we looked at ourselves and say, what are we doing for our community? And to be clear, for a long time, the job site did not reflect the community. It just didn't. And about 30 years ago, the building trades really had to take a look inside themselves and say, hey, how are we doing for everybody here? Not just for ourselves or the people we know or our brother or our sister. How are we doing for everybody? And over the last 30 years, I've been blessed to be part of pre-apprenticeship programs where we go and we reach out to everybody that serves a job. Foster kids, recently incarcerated youth, right? People that look more like me, right? That you can go out and say, listen, the building trades are for everybody. We're gonna train you, we're gonna give you a craft, and then it's up to you to get up in the morning and get to work. That's all we're asking for here. So the idea that sometimes these things get convoluted by the other side, that it's some special treatment for a PRO Act to be in a union, really falls in the face of what this country was based on. It's the idea that they organize and stand up for each other. So I couldn't be more proud, like I said, to be here and be partners with John and have such a leadership in Washington, D.C. President Biden, what he's doing for labor, personally for the building trades, by putting project labor agreements in for federal work projects, what he's saying is this: I want apprenticeship. Apprenticeship is an opportunity to the middle class. That's all he's saying. I'm not saying he wants special conditions or anything else, just apprenticeship. And we believe if you give people the right to join a union, an apprenticeship, that's on the path to the middle class. So once again, I couldn't be more thankful for all the work you do. And like I said, we've got a lot more work to do to pass this thing, right? So, thanks again. So I'd like to take this time then to also, hope I don't mess this up, introduce my sister over there, Patty Bailey.
Hi, thank you. My name is Patty Bailey, and I am Director of Early Learning for SEIU 925. And I'd like to always let people know what SEIU stands for. It's Service Employees International Union. I am so proud to be a part of that union, and I wanted to let you know about how important I feel unions are. Our union is the pulse of supporting our work, and it is critical and necessary voices that rise to the occasion to fight for better circumstances in the workplace. Nothing was done for our members and our needs until we collectively spoke out about them and sat at the table with local politicians and then bargained with state agencies unified. We had to be diligent and steady. We had some no's and we had some wins. We were able to win healthcare, rate increases, professional development days, and more. In these efforts, not only did our family child care providers benefit our push for change, but like we know, rising tides lift all boats. Our union is important to the members because it gives us a voice, a collective power, to raise awareness to what we need to make for better work conditions, and something that we're passionate about. Our family child cares provide quality education in safe environments, so our families could go to work and keep our economies moving. The surge of organizing throughout this pandemic, all service employees were seen as essential. I believe that doing this job on a daily basis, we are the best advocates for ourselves to let you know what conditions are and how we need them to be changed. Yes, there are benefits that may be okay and manageable, but what are the actual conditions in the workplace? Shared concerns and experiences can be expressed by collective voices. You know the saying, the squeaky wheels get the grease? Well, if it squeaks loud enough, it gets the attention. In this special time and season, people see the value of speaking up and speaking out in a unified way to bring change and attention for better work conditions. I strongly believe that a collective approach can bring change and opportunities to experience what they've fought for. As my union president says, who's with us on today, Tricia Shorter, she says, go fight, win. We need to continue the fight so we could win. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Machinists, and I am an immigrant myself. I'm from Ethiopia. I am a nurse. I work at Harborview Medical Center, and I have been a nurse for the last 20 years. It's a pleasure. Like, I love my job, and just being a nurse is a great opportunity I have. So the last, couple of years during pandemic was a very challenging time for my career. It was like COVID was the unknown. Of course, there was a lots of stress that comes with it, but it was not the COVID itself. For me and for most of my coworkers, we had the same goal. We were there to take care of patients. So being there, helping each other physically, emotionally, it made it less stressful because we have one goal. We're there to take care of our patients. But the hardest part was I was like, I cannot believe we have to go through that. The hardest part was like, we did not have the right PPE. We did not have the right gear to do our job. Our job place was not safe. And staffing was a huge issue. We were short-staffed. Of course, we were short-staffed way before COVID. I am a union delegate, and also I'm in the nurse staffing committee, so we've been fighting to fix the short staffing way before COVID. But when COVID hit us, it just to the point like we were so short staffed. It was very hard. So I'm so grateful to be part of the union. Day after day, we had to fight. We had to work so hard to get the right PPE. One of my coworkers was put it this way, like, it's just like you are a soldier, you are ready to give your life for your country to go and fight the enemy. So we're there to take care of our patients, but it's just like go and fight, but we're not going to give you the right equipment, So we were there to take care of our patients, but not having the PPE, it was very stressful. We are human beings. We have family members who are immunocompromised. We have elderly people, some of us, we have our own illness, but we were there to take care of our patients in the duty we were called to do. As a unit, we were able to fight to give issue was a huge concern, but we were trying to find some solution to fix it by passing some intensive pay, like double time. For some of you who doesn't know, it's like we're so short staffed, so but it just encourages people to come and help their coworkers on their day off by paying them a little bit more money. So we have done as a unit, we have done a tremendous amount of job besides our taking care of patients, but we really need legislative, we need some kind of help from we need some help to pass some laws which is going to protect our place, our workplace to be a safe place.
My list here, but I'll try and be brief. My name is John Mizrahi. I'm the Secretary Treasurer of UFCW 3000. We're the largest union in Washington State with about 50,000 members working grocery, healthcare, food processing, and cannabis. I'm also here with one of our member leaders, Michaela, who's a respiratory therapist at St. Pete's, and we want to talk about front lines in the pandemic, respiratory therapists during a respiratory pandemic. Michaela was on those front lines. Also, her unit organized during the pandemic on their third or fourth attempt to organize over the years. So, really saw a lot of the challenges that workers face when they're organizing their workplace. So 93% of our membership in UFCW 3000 were union essential during the pandemic, which wasn't a big surprise to us. The term may have been new, but even without the pandemic, when there's a flood or a wildfire or a blackout, the place people go is the grocery store or they end up in the hospital. So we've seen that our workers face these hazards every day, but the pandemic obviously brought that to light. But what it also brought to light is the importance of having a union at your workplace. We saw early in the pandemic, one of our grocery employers, who I won't name, was trying to discipline people for wearing masks at the beginning of the pandemic because it would scare away customers, and we had to fight against that. During the PPE crisis, toward the beginning, we partnered with our siblings in the building trades as work was down in the building trades to get some of the excess PPE that they all had to the healthcare facilities. And we were driving around in trucks picking up PPEs from painters and driving them to hospitals. That was the power of the union. When COVID was ripping through our meatpacking and processing plants, we were able to educate those workers on how to turn down unsafe working conditions. And we've seen even through the data, the outcomes that folks at non-union workplaces have had worse COVID outcomes than at union workplaces. And now, as we're turning the corner of the pandemic, it's these new crises. We're seeing our members on the front line of the homelessness, opioid pandemic, and the mental health crisis in our country. I can't even speculate what reasons. It seems like the grocery stores have become the new ground zero for mass shootings. Very scary. And we're seeing an unprecedented staffing crisis in the healthcare industry. So for all these reasons, we know that we need massive reform. We need things to happen on the federal level. We also need folks to be in unions. We always say that the best labor standard people can have is a union contract. But despite how essential these workers are, maybe because of it, we also see some of the nastiest anti-union campaigns, especially in the grocery retail industry, where, I could talk for an hour about all the things we've seen of workers getting fired, flooding shop floors with anti-union workers, the negativity that the employers put out, and the threats that workers face when they try and form a union. So, in addition to federal help on safety standards, it's great to hear you talk about workforce development. We believe that we need strong workforce development for high wage earners, middle wage earners, but also our lowest wage earners to help get them ready for the future of work. And as things become automated, or as micro fulfillment comes into our workplaces, how do we train folks to handle all these processes? But yeah, most importantly, really breaking down those barriers to help people form a union at their workplace. And I think that's what the PRO Act does. And obviously, so appreciative to all your leadership on that and your commitment to these workers.
So I applaud Senator Murray, Secretary Walsh. Your words are inspiring. We know that unionizing changes the balance of power. It gives people rights, and through those rights, they're able to change all those other things that raise the standard of living. So, thank you for being here, and I get to turn it back over to Secretary Walsh or Senator Murray.
Senator Murray.
I'll just say quickly thank you to all of you for sharing your passions and your stories, and it really drives home to all of us why it is so important what we do in this country to make sure that every single worker has the ability to join a union if they so choose, but that empowerment of people working together to fight for the rights is what our country's built on. And that's been torn away over the past decade, so we need to build it back. So I'm very excited to be a part of this, and I'm gonna keep working until we get it done.
Thank you so much, Senator Murray, for gathering us. And I too am an immigrant. Came to this country when I was 16 years old by myself. And I remember when I had the opportunity to sit with the president in the Oval Office, the opportunity that people see around the world in the United States to come to this country and to have a better life and to be able to have a middle class that is vibrant and can support your family is what so many people around the world are coming here for. And so it's really you all that we need to thank for the work that you do in the trenches every day, and for bringing hope to people that out of crisis comes courage. That's what I think of a lot of organizing as being, is that opportunity to really bring courage and better opportunities for people. That's what the PRO Act is about. Senator Murray and I and Secretary Walsh through the administration will do everything we can to continue to strengthen the ability for workers to unionize, because it leads to better lives for those workers, for non-unionized workers, and for our entire country.
I should have started by thanking you for your work during the pandemic, before the pandemic, after the pandemic. Essential workers were there every day. Grocery store workers, nurses, hospital, building trades continue to, in a lot of cities across America, build hospitals, makeshift hospitals. They did in Boston and did in New York and other places, so thank you for all that as well. I should have begun there. And again, today's conversation is about somebody's right to be able to join the union, a free, independent right, without being intimidated, quite honestly. And you know, the PRO Act, as Senator Murray said, it's a pretty simple piece of legislation. It's allowing you the opportunity. It's the workers' rights, whether it's in a digital print shop for a newspaper, or a coffee shop, or a hospital, what have you. It's the workers' rights to be able to decide if they wanted to form a union, and that's basically what we're talking about here today. So thank you for the opportunity, and again, Machinists, thank you, John, for opening the hall to us today to have this important conversation, and some other ones we're going to have a little later.
And I believe we can take questions.
We'll do that. We'll grab. So we can go ahead with you guys.
Hey. Who's starting?
You have a question?
Sure, I'll start.
Yeah.
We mentioned Starbucks. Mr. Secretary, you're familiar with the effort to unionize the stores there. Starbucks, meanwhile, is at least putting a heavy influence campaign against it. How would the PRO Act help protect these workers in that regard?
Well, I think the PRO Act, and also President Biden's words, and I'll repeat them, everyone should have a right to join a union. And I think that, you know, if people really want to join a union, they should be able to. And certainly we saw that the other day in Starbucks, with 9-0 vote, I think it was. And we've seen it now in a couple stores, if I'm not mistaken, around the country. So I think that, you know, people should have the right. But what the PRO Act would do would allow people to the right to gather and not be intimidated, and companies or developers or owners wouldn't be able to bring outside influences to discourage people.
So, and I want to follow up on that, because I have worked in a shop where we attempted to unionize and it failed, and mostly because younger workers were afraid they would lose their jobs.
Yeah.
How do you teach these young people coming up that that's not a problem?
I actually think that's a day of the past. I think that younger workers now are looking very encouraging to join unions and create. I think I'm making an assumption here now. If you look at you know, whether it's Starbucks or what's going on in Alabama, these are younger workers in a lot of cases that are coming together saying, wait a second, we're not happy with our situation where we are. We've seen it with a lot. When we talk about this great resignation, it wasn't all older workers that left for better opportunities. It's younger workers. So, you know, we're seeing collective power by individuals coming together, looking to better their situation. What that means is opportunities to maybe get in the middle class, earn better wages, work one job rather than 4 jobs. So there's real opportunity here.
So would you call the Great Resignation a pivotal moment, a change in the labor movement?
I wouldn't call the Great Resignation the Great Resignation. I think it's workers looking to improve their position, their worker power, better jobs, better opportunities for the middle class.
So I got a question for you before I go to you. I'd love to understand what you can do, you know, now without the PRO Act to make people who are considering organizing, they're watching the votes on the East Coast, they're saying, should I organize my Amazon Fresh? Should I organize, the warehouse here in Seattle or in Kent? What can you tell for them about what you'll do now?
Well, it's not really about me and doing anything. Workers have to organize themselves, and unions work collectively with workers to organize. What we're doing at the Department of Labor is trying to increase better opportunities for workforce development, investments, working with the Senate, working with the Congress, and again, the PRO Act is about removing the barrier that stops people from being able to organize. I support collective bargaining. Clearly, I'm a former union president, former head of the building trades in the city of Boston, so I support worker organizing. I support worker density, union density, but as a Secretary of Labor, quite honestly, I can't tell workers to organize. That's workers' rights, and I think that the poll numbers and what you're hearing out in the country speaks for itself. 70% of American people, at least the last poll I saw, 70% of American workers are interested in looking at a union, potentially joining a union, forming a union, moving forward. That's something that's going to happen through the labor movement, through the AFL-CIO, through the building trades, through SEIUs, the world, and all those folks.
Can you talk more about how the PRO Act and your department in general is going to make sure that companies don't retaliate or intimidate workers? I mean, the NLRB has come down on both Starbucks and Amazon, and is that enough?
Well, one thing we did was, I mentioned it here, was when the president appointed the Worker Empowerment Task Force, he asked if I would co-chair it. The vice president chaired it, and we came up with over 70 recommendations for bettering people's position in work. And some of that is through collective bargaining, some of that's through being able to organize and unionize, and there's other aspects of the bill as well. So we're going to continue to push that, as well as, I work with Congressman Jayapal talked about the infrastructure law that was passed, and Senator Murray's very involved in that. Included in that is good working conditions, is Davis-Bacon prevailing wage. Those setting a good base for wages. Not unionized workers aren't the only ones going to benefit from that. All workers are going to benefit from having a good prevailing wage and Davis-Bacon requirements, and to protect workers for better positions. And I think that where we are at a pivotal moment in our country right now, where workers are looking for better opportunities. And President Biden has said this. Years ago, we had the trickle-down economy, and people said it's going to work great. It's going to start at the top, trickle all the way down to the workforce. Well, that trickling down stopped at 2 or 3%, and a few other people got a couple drops. When President Biden talks about the economy, he talks about building from the middle out and the bottom up, which means people that are in the middle class now, how do they get opportunities to do better for themselves? And how do we help people that have never had an opportunity to get into the middle class? Congressman Jayapal talks about being an immigrant. My father and mother are immigrants, many immigrants in this country, many poor people in this country, the black community, Latino community, women, they've never had a chance to get a feel or a taste of what the middle class is all about. And what we do in our policies, whether it's the PRO Act, Davis-Bacon prevailing wage, or some of the workforce development, it is an opportunity about creating a pathway into the middle class. That's how we make an equal, just society for everybody. So people that want to come to this community here and buy a home, or go to my community where I grew up in Boston, or go to anywhere in the country they have an opportunity, we have to collectively work together.
But do you think there needs to be anything more to discourage employers from union busting and
I think conversations. As Secretary of Labor, I spent a lot of time. In union halls. I spent a lot of time talking to workers, but I also spent a good amount of time talking to employers as well. And it's not just about organizing and union organizing, but it's also about paid family leave. It's about creating pathways. Levi Strauss, a company in America that I met with very early on in my administration, in my time as Secretary of Labor, and we were talking about paid family leave, and they offered it for their employees. And what they said was, it's an amazing opportunity for recruitment of employees to their company, and also retention. So I think we got to share some best practices here as well. Companies should share some best practices.
Can I ask Senator Murray a question? So Senator Murray, I know we don't know if the PRO Act will pass, but we know you're trying to put parts of it in other bills, in the reconciliation bill, for example, as workers are considering organizing and how their prospects of organizing could change in the future. Like, what's something realistic that could go into one of those bills that they can look forward to, maybe be in the reconciliation bill? That'll really help them, especially service workers.
Sure. First of all, my goal is to get the PRO Act to the president and have him sign the entire bill into law. That's our goal. In the Build Back Better, the House included some provisions that tightened some of the fines on businesses who weren't practicing correctly. who are using their advantage to take advantage of workers. Increasing fines is a way that we can make sure that the current laws that we have are enforced. You asked about some of the companies that we're seeing today that are taking aggressive actions. The National Labor Relations Board is a critical part of making sure that the laws are enforced. It's been a long time bipartisan board who really both employers and employees have relied on to make sure that everything is fair and equal. For the last 5-6 years, that board has had teeth taken away from it, both by itself, by president, former president, not this one, and by not having all of its members there, or not having the teeth or the support they needed in terms of resources to pursue these. We are working really hard now to make sure that the National Labor Relations Board has the resources, the people in place to make sure that people don't violate the law.
Can you say anything about, you've mentioned the aggressive anti-organizing campaigns that are going on. Can you give some more specific examples from our local region of what you've seen and what you hope local workers can take away from?
Well, I think what local workers can take away is exactly what the Secretary just talked about. For a long time in our country, pre-pandemic, it was like, I don't need a union. You saw it in your own workplace. But now people are going, wait a minute, I'm living through this COVID thing. My kids have been home. I've had to work and figure out life. And I'm not going back to the same job that puts me down, is not safe, doesn't give me the salary I need. I'm going to demand a better workplace and better salary. And I am a commodity that business needs. And the way to achieve that is by having workers gather together. And I'm seeing that force come from the ground up, not from the top down, but from the ground up.
Can you specify which provisions I know your goal is to pass the PRO Act, but which things do you think could fit in the reconciliation bill, which has to be tied more to economics?
The reconciliation bill is a very difficult bill to put parts of this into because it has to follow very strict budget requirements that are challenging to do. So in the PRO Act, the House put some provisions in to strengthen some of the fines that can be levied so that the government has more power to make sure people are following the law. But what we want to see is the whole PRO Act provision put in place, which really makes sure that workers have the right to organize.
Okay, so we got to wrap up. Why don't we give the Congresswoman last word?
Yeah, you want to say something else about reconciliation?
Well, I'll just say that, what we've put in are the strengthening of the fines for employers who violate union laws and organizing laws and union bust. And so that was the very narrow piece that we thought could get through in a reconciliation bill. Obviously, some of the provisions around Davis-Bacon are some of the best ways to strengthen this. Some of the opportunities that the Secretary talked about, investing in apprenticeship programs, workforce development programs, those are also really important ways to build our unionized sector. But at the end of the day, we have to have much more aggressive ability for employers to feel some pain if they do take on the practices that they're taking on.
One more question for all of you. Yes, or robots, all the above.
I can speak to that. We just did a roundtable, a set of roundtables in San Francisco with the Select Committee on Income Disparity, and it was really focused around AI and the challenges and the opportunities with AI. There are some places where AI has been able to do a really good job, but there are a lot of places where we're using AI technology, even in government, by the way, that are not actually appropriate. And it also, around the issues of facial recognition, for example, technology, and the ways in which communities of color are disproportionately wrongly identified, and the ways that that's built into the algorithm. We met with any number of companies, some that are really pushing AI technology and some that are actually trying to make the algorithms better, because the more developed they get, the larger scale the algorithms get, the more likely it is that you will have these big disparities. And we're using them right now, everything from insurance companies to benefits, that are healthcare benefits, things like that, and we really need to look into that. So we're working on how to harness AI technology in a way that is helpful, but not actually widening income disparity. So it's not really around the future of jobs. I think in terms of future of work, there's a lot of discussions around that. But you heard Joe talking about the need to, Joe Mizrahi talking about the need to make sure that our lower wage workers are also being skilled up in different ways and getting opportunities for understanding how they can participate in a new economy. Because right now, I know the Secretary probably has heard this before, when I say future of work in a lot of union halls, people are like, oh no, you're going to take my job away and you're going to give me things to do that I can't do and that I'm not going to be trained for. So we've got to change that by really investing in those workforces.
I got another question for Senator Murray. Another reporter's working on a story about safe banking. There have been robberies of cannabis stores in Washington State, and somebody, I think, was shot in Tacoma or something. What are you working on to help resolve that?
We're trying to pass the SAFE Act in the Senate that will allow our banks to be able to will allow our marijuana industry to be able to bank safely so that we don't have them as cash-only storefronts. That is a real safety issue. We're trying to get that passed in the Senate. Senator Schumer has a much larger, broader package that he's trying to work and include it in. I just want the banking piece. I want all of it, but I want the banking piece to pass because we are seeing right here in Washington State what that means if they don't have that protection.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.